I'll never forget the morning I walked out to check my pastures and saw splintered wood scattered like matchsticks across the dirt. The fence I'd sweated over for weeks not just broken, but destroyed. My herd had been set loose, hoof prints trailing off into the horizon like some twisted signature. And right then, I knew it wasn't the work of a storm or wild animals. This was sabotage, plain and simple. And there was only one person bold, petty, and obsessed enough to try something like this. Karen, self-declared queen of the HOA, clipboard in hand, convinced she ruled the whole county. She thought knocking down my fence would put me in my place, prove she could control everything out here. Instead, it lit a fuse I didn't even know I was carrying. See, what Karen didn't realize, what a lot of folks don't realize about ranch life, is that you don't scare easy when you've got 200 bison backing you up. If you're watching this right now, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Out here, everything runs on a different clock. Cows shifting in the corral before sunrise, barn doors creaking open, the air crisp with dew and hay, and just the faintest promise of a day where nothing will go wrong. That's the world I carved out for myself. Hard work, peace, and a stretch of land that was mine, miles away from the noise of town. My ranch stretches over rolling hills, bordered by a fence that was as much a symbol as a line in the dirt. Every board, every post, hammered in by my own hand. A reminder that ownership isn't just paperwork, it's effort and pride, and knowing where your world begins and ends. My family's deed goes back generations, long before anyone ever heard the word HOA. And yet, none of that mattered to Karen. She was determined to make my property her project. You ever met someone like that? The kind who can't leave well enough alone? She'd cruise by in her Lexus twice a week, visor on, scribbling notes, snapping pictures of my barn, always mumbling about community standards and collective vision, like she was reciting gospel. To her, my land was an eyesore, my animals a problem, and me, well, I was just an inconvenience to be managed, a square peg refusing to fit her round hole. At first, I ignored her. Figured, the less attention you feed folks like that, the sooner they'll move on. But not Karen. Winning was her addiction, and if dragging my ranch into the HOA was what it took to get her fix, she wasn't about to let up. The letters started coming, neatly typed HOA warnings about landscaping violations and fence uniformity. Can you imagine? On a cattle ranch? I tossed them in the fire pit, got on with my day. But Karen escalated. Sent a couple of her board buddies out. Men who looked like they'd never shoveled anything heavier than a latte. Tried to sweet-talk me into joining the association for the good of property values. I nearly choked laughing. Then came the real circus, the HOA meetings. Now, I never wanted to step foot in one of those gatherings, but sometimes you have to make your position clear. I showed up, boots still dusty from the field, Karen at the front, clipboard in hand, acting like a dictator at her coronation. I told the whole room, calm as you please. This ranch isn't now, nor will it ever be, part of your HOA. My land, my rules. Karen's smile never cracked. We'll see about that. And that's when she started her campaign of 1,000 tiny wars. Bogus fines, nuisance complaints, threats I laughed off. Until one day, it stopped being funny. One morning, I found a violation notice pinned to my gate with attack, HOA seal stamped on top, accusing me of failing to maintain a uniform fence color. This is a fence that's seen more dust, mud, and sun than most folks see in a lifetime. Next day, a pile of gravel dumped across my access road, just enough to scrape the undercarriage of my truck. The county shrugged. They said it was common road, HOA's responsibility. Karen's handprints all over it. Then, the real blow, a thick envelope threatening a lawsuit over my barn, claiming it was illegal for not matching the HOA's aesthetic. That barn's been there 20 years longer than her subdivision. Didn't matter. She wanted it gone, or else she'd start fining me daily. You know that feeling when someone keeps poking you, just to see how far you'll bend? I bent. All right, right up to the point of breaking. It was a cold night, dogs barking low, warning me something wasn't right. I grabbed my flashlight, boots, and headed out. The sight that greeted me, the fence gutted, sawed clean, entire sections flat, herd gone. Well, I knew right then Karen had finally crossed the line. Next morning, tire tracks leading out, HOA pamphlet left behind like a calling card. She didn't even try to hide it. I was angry, sure, But more than that, I was humiliated. Out here, a fence is your word, and she'd torn through mine like it was nothing. The neighbors saw, everyone knew. Karen wanted them to. And that was her real game. Humiliation. Whisper campaigns at the feed store. Did you hear? His cattle ran wild. Can't even control his own land. I'd had enough. The next HOA meeting, Karen put on her biggest show yet. Photos of my broken fence, my cattle, the whole bit. Painting me as the problem, the outsider, the threat. I stood there, letting her finish, then laid it out. My fence was cut. We all know who benefits from that. Karen didn't miss a beat. Maybe if you played by the rules, fences wouldn't be a problem. You ever feel the whole room is against you? That was me. Karen had them eating out of her hand, and I left that night burning with a kind of humiliation that either breaks a man or makes him dangerous. Back at my ranch, watching my bison shift in the moonlight, I realized if Karen wanted a show, well, I'd give her one. Let me back up a sec, because if you've never been up close to a bison, you might not understand. They're not cattle. They're wild. They're heavy. They're a force. If Karen wanted to bring the wild out of me, she was about to get a lesson. Over the next week, I started planning, not a revenge fantasy, but something closer to poetic justice. The HOA office was built on a little patch of land that sloped down from the road, perfect for a stampede. If someone, say, happened to open the right gate. I made my preparations, reinforced the herd's path, conditioned them to linger near the far gate. Played the part of the defeated rancher, let Karen believe she'd won. Then came Thursday night, the monthly board meeting. Lights on in the office, Karen's voice carrying across the lot. I stood at the fence, 200 bison restless behind me. Whispered, "Showtime, boys." Unlatched the gate. They moved like thunder, hooves pounding, dust rising, horns gleaming in the headlights as they barreled down the slope. Cars rocked, alarms screamed, the office windows rattled. Inside, chaos. Karen at the podium, mouth open, people scrambling, her clipboard flying. Flower beds, banners, everything the HOA prized, flattened in seconds. Karen tried to herd people toward the exits, only to be cut off by two massive bulls. She ended up on the floor, crawling, her authority turned to dust. And me? I watched from the ridge, arms crossed. Felt something like relief wash over me. Reporters swarmed in the next day. Karen tried to spin the story, claimed I'd endangered the community, demanded I be arrested. But the story got away from her. Neighbors told reporters about the cut fence, the saw marks, the threats. The sheriff, tired as he looked, told me I was in the clear, my herd had the right to roam, and the real crime was the tampering. The community turned on Karen. The board started resigning. Folks refused to pay for bison damage fees. Meetings dissolved into shouting matches. And here's where the twist comes in. See, Karen thought she was on solid ground. But what she didn't know, what nobody bothered to check, was that the little patch of land the HOA office sat on wasn't public land. My great-grandfather had bought that acre, and it had stayed in our family. All it took was one visit to the county clerk's office to get the papers in order. Walked into the office, dropped the deed on the desk, told Karen and what was left of her board they had 30 days to vacate. You should have seen the look on her face. Shock, then denial, then that cold realization as she flipped through the century-old records. They packed up, truck after truck hauling out the remains of Karen's little empire, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a life vest. The office, now just an empty shell, stood as a monument to the folly of trying to outmuscle the truth. And me? I rebuilt my fence, stronger than before. The herd grazed in peace. Neighbors waved a little friendlier. The storm had passed. Karen's reign ended not with a bang, but with paperwork and the kind of justice you only get in wide open country. Earned, not given. But here's the thing. You never really win against people like Karen. They just regroup, find a new battle to fight, maybe a new victim. Out here, though, I learned that strength isn't about shouting the loudest or winning every argument. It's about patience, grit, and knowing when to stand your ground. Sometimes, the only way to remind folks of where true power lies is to let the dust settle and let the land do the talking. So let me throw this to you. Have you ever had your own Karen moment? Where someone tried to take what was yours, tell you how to live, control your peace? Drop a comment below. Tell me your story, your town, or just your thoughts on who was right and who was wrong. Because in the end, Every community's got its battles, and sometimes the only way to win is to unleash a little wild.